Hello, everyone. This is Greg, your host of Goddamn Gamecube. Welcome to Season 3. If you enjoy listening to our show, consider subscribing to us on YouTube for exclusive video content. Thank you and enjoy today's episode. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube. Greg and Beppe are your hosts today. My brother Nick is with us as well, and this is an exciting one. We are going to be talking about the Demon's Souls remake on the PlayStation 5. We were all lucky enough, I should say, my brother and I were lucky enough to get PlayStation 5s. Beppe played this along with us. Beppe, why don't you take it away? Let's go for it.
Sure. It's pretty fitting that I think the Souls series is one of our most popular. So I think pretty on brand to follow up a Resident Evil episode with this one. So essentially, I have played about 60% of this game, I think. I have watched all of it on YouTube. I watched a streamer, I think Vadi's stream, and you guys have completed it. So keeping in mind that our perspectives are pretty different in that I've played the first one, the original game, about 4 times through, and I've only experienced part of the remake, whereas someone like Nick has only played a couple hours of the original and has completed the remake. So we're all sharing our different opinions here. Our initial impressions. I think the preamble I'd like to say about this game is that it is, for better or worse, a faithful remake. This is more of what I would like to call a remaster. I wish more remasters put as much effort into the fidelity. It's pretty much peerless as far as I'm concerned. This was It's been a long time since I've seen a game that was an example of the next generation, where it really shocked me. Like, wow, this is what they can do now. Because this game, it has amazing resolution. The frame rate is perfect. The lighting is incredible. It's just a great showcase of what the technology is now capable of. And not only in that respect, but also a great example of the haptic feedback in the controller, which we'll have a lot to say about. Do you guys want to share your initial impressions about this game?
Yeah, so this game is disgusting in terms of how it plays, and the haptic feedback is awesome. I wasn't sure, is haptic feedback going to be kind of gimmicky? Am I not going to like it? It feels disgusting. When you're picking somebody up with a spear, when you backstab somebody and pick them up and throw them down, it feels I can't even describe it to you, when the controller feels pressurized and you really feel your character pick them up and put them down. And whenever you strike an enemy, the controller just feels like it slows down a little as you're scraping flesh and bone and armor.
Well, the one I noticed was when you say you bury an axe in someone's back, right? And the initial impact is very strong, but the subtlety they're able to capture when you're ripping it out, and it's you're kind of pulling it out of their spine. It's like a little rattle. It's
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Wow. Really cool. I think that is Nick, do you want to say a few words about your perspective?
Yeah. So like Beppe said, I played a couple hours of the original, and I never finished it. I didn't get that far, and I blitzed through this remake, not for the sake of beating it, but because I loved it.
Right.
It took me, I won't lie, it took me a little while to get into it. Because, I'm used to Dark Souls, I'm used to Bloodborne, I'm used to everything that came after Demon's Souls. Mm-hmm. And also, like you said, Beppe, this is a very faithful remake.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff in there, I'm okay, I'm going to have to get used to this. Some of the zones, like the swamp, I was okay, not my favorite thing. But once I really got into the game, got into the systems and everything, I loved basically every second of it. I am a huge fan of this game, and I honestly might even put it above Dark Souls 3.
Mm.
I thought this game was incredible.
Okay. Yeah. So, honestly, the presentation is really just spectacular in terms of the technology and the fidelity. I did have some significant artistic grievances with it, which we'll get to. In general, I think that very little has changed. I think they've added some new items, and they improved some of the animations quite a bit, like the backstab, like the different weapons, parrying, etc. The skeleton is pretty much the same. I think in some places, and this is just it's a really difficult thing to capture, because remakes are so finicky in that everyone is going to have different impressions of what they liked about the game, and there's certain things that are always lost in the transition. It's rarely, I mean, we talk this to death, but Resident Evil 1, it's rarely the completely makes the original irrelevant. And that's the case in this game, in my opinion. I think that certain areas could have used a tune-up. I don't think they translated super well to the higher resolution, particularly the Valley of Defilement, the swamp level. I thought some of the areas, I think it was just kind of I'm looking for a little bit more courage when it comes to recognizing dated elements of something, and more kind of recognize. I mean, it's different because certain things that I've noticed about the original game, or someone like Matthew Matosis or whatever, but it's something that they'll notice is not necessarily the universal experience for everyone. Like, I like that there are weird puzzle bosses, and they've kept some of them, but I was really disheartened when we got up to Maiden Estraya and she has like an AoE attack now, because I thought it was so unique that you don't even Garl Vinland has no health meter or anything. He's just like an NPC for all intents and purposes that you have to get by. And like when you get up to her in the original game, she just dies. She kills herself. And I thought that was kind of like, I think you missed the tonal point of this scene. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the case in a couple places. I don't have a ton to say. I think that some of the character redesigns were a little... I think it just kind of sucked the weirdness out, which I think is so interesting about Demon's Souls. Because, I mean, like, I love Dark Souls because it's very much a straightforward, like, Western medieval fantasy experience through, like, Japanese eyes, right? And they are kind of like, there's little things about their culture that they're injecting into the Western medieval stuff. This game is completely different, and it's a very kind of original and bizarre world that I don't think needed to be watered down and at all, essentially. I think the fat official is my biggest I just, because we were talking about this a little bit, where the initial one in the original game, you can't really tell even if their face is a mask or if it's their actual face. It's just this kind of grotesque, distorted, looks like the Pot of Greed from Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's like, oh, that's so strange. And the way they laugh and it's, I just like certain things, which obviously, you know, didn't affect your experience at all, Nick, because you have nothing to really compare it to. Mm-hmm. But for me, certain decisions they made, I didn't really agree with in that respect. Do you want to say anything about like the differences, or, you know, how they mattered or not really, or
yeah,
whatever?
Sure. So I think the word that I used in our private chat was this game got Hollywooded a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think I lean a little bit towards Nick's opinion on the game, where I just thought it was killer. And when I played through this, I said, wait a minute, Dark Souls is the best looking game on earth now? When did that happen? Right? It's like, aesthetically, I think it looks amazing. I did not notice, I think, some of the artistic changes that you did.
Yeah.
By that, I mean, the fat official looking different didn't bother me because I didn't really pick up on the mask thing in the original.
Yeah.
And also, like, I am more bothered in the remake by the gameplay elements that are still broken rather than, I think the Valley of Defilement, I think artistic wise still looks fine. I think all the different shades and colors.
I mean, it looks a lot better.
Right. I think my biggest problem with the Demon's Souls remake, I have very few, like, I thought it was really good, is it's a little bit towards what you said, Beppe, where when there is something that's broken or it didn't play very well, this is your opportunity to fix it.
Yep.
And even if you swing and miss, I feel like what you and I wanted from this, Beppe, is take some risks and fix it.
Yeah.
Where like, but that's so hard to argue, though. You know what I mean?
Because they did change something like that boss, and I didn't like
exactly.
it. So it's very a difficult.
It's a difficult, like, sort of, what's the word, like line to tightrope walk, where there is. I think Blue Point said this too in an interview. I could be misquoting this. There are some fans who would want it to be straight up the same, and some fans that want it to be different. But what fans want to be different is different for everyone.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do. Like what I wanted from this game was I have no problem with it that it's 100% faithful. I thought maybe we'd get a bigger variety of items, maybe fixing the healing system a little. They said they would fix world tendency. Not really. It's still really obtuse and weird. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's kind of bad because I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
But they kept saying they were going to, I just feel like the things they said they were going to fix, it was so white glove and so like,
I don't want to change too much.
I don't want to change too much, but I feel like I'm falling into that gap where I just didn't get the changes I wanted, even though I think it's a really good game.
So obviously, I have no changes that I wanted because I never finished the original. But according to you both, one change they did make was the inventory system.
Oh, much better.
When you're full, you have given the choice to send things to the. I almost said convoy. It's not the convoy. To send things to
condo.
to your boy Stockpile Thomas. I guess in the original, when your inventory was full, you just couldn't pick up anything and you had to discard stuff.
It was really annoying.
Now, in the original, I actually don't know this. Were you able to go to a blacksmith and use the stones from your stash, or do they have to be in your inventory?
I thought you could. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. Hard for me to say.
Right,
I thought you could.
Either way.
The original game didn't even have like a forgiveness system. So like if you aggroed an NPC, this game does.
Is that new?
Yes.
That's a new thing.
That's a new thing.
Okay.
So I mean, I'd consider that positive because it is way too easy for like an enemy to run into. Like that, the filthy woman is right next to all those rats and
Yeah.
and all
you
the
could very easily
guys,
stab her. Yeah.
and then she gets mad at you. You know what I mean?
Hey, what
Like,
the hell?
so I don't begrudge them that decision at all. Like I said, many of my gripes were like aesthetic. Particularly, I've talked a little about the designs. Especially, I would like to point out the sound design is markedly different. I think a lot of stuff kind of gets buried in the mix where it stood out before. The Tower of Latria, the opening chapter, is a very kind of iconic thing for me because when you start out, you don't really have a clear perspective on the whole layout of the prison, and you're just hearing these very distinct sounds. And we are going to play a couple of those. We're going to add them in post, and we're gonna play a couple for comparison just to illustrate the differences. So what I'd like to address is number one, the bells of the Mind Flayer, because they are a great way to kind of notify you that those guys are around the corner. You know, like because they can do some damage, so it's kind of like it's giving you a little hint, it's giving you a little bit of a tell that like to be on the lookout, whatever. It's a very prominent sound. The next thing I want to talk about is the Lord Rydell. His scream is completely different. And I barely heard it in the new one. And it's kind of like a, hey, it's like kind of just a voice on the wind. And when you get into that area in the original, it's like this disgusting, like groan. And it's just like, what is that? Like you just hear, help me. It's just like you kind of don't want to. You're like, oh, what? I don't even know. And the last thing is the singing woman who's in the cell. She's a merchant.
Yep.
And in the new version, she's singing, I believe, like the end credits theme. She's just kind of like, you know, singing it to nobody. In the original version, it's so bizarre. She's just kind of singing this interval back and forth, and it's really like off-putting, and it like kind of like balls your stomach up a little bit. So we're just going to play a couple of those comparative sounds so you can hear the differences. And now the remake. So this is the original Lord Rydell scream. And this is the remake.
Please help me!
This is what the singing woman sounded like in the original game. And this is what she sounds like in the remake. So I hope you understood what we're talking about there. And lastly, I guess my last criticism, I guess, would be the way the music was reworked for this one. And I kind of I was telling Greg a little bit about this off mic, but it's sort of every boss. It kind of does the Dark Souls 2 thing where every boss is like epic. And I think what made the original so interesting was how there was a lot of tonal variety in the original tracks. You know, there was some that were climactic, but even the quote unquote final boss fight, it was a little restrained. And for example, for some perspective, like imagine like Sif from Dark Souls. Imagine his theme was more like grand. Like that's not the point of the fight. It's sad. It's like it's a sad series of events that's brought you here, and it's a shame that you have to like put him down. And so we have a couple examples of that, which we'd like to share with you, as well as a positive example. And this is my favorite track from Demon Souls, the original, which I think was rearranged very tastefully in this version. So we've got 2 bad examples and 1 good example that we'll play for you right now. And now the remake of the Fool's Idol theme. This is how the original version of the King Allen theme starts. And this is the remix version. This track is called One Who Craves Souls. It's from the bad ending of the game. And this is the remix version of that track. I hope you heard the difference, because I sure did. Guys, where are we going next?
So I just wanted to say, on the subject of the music for a second, when Beppe and I were discussing this in the chat, I think this soundtrack is a little bit more personal to you than me. I don't really listen to the Souls soundtrack for fun. Like, I don't really listen to it outside the game. But I think what I noticed, what Beppe is trying to display to you guys that jumped out to me was I feel like the irony of the original recordings is lost in some of these. Where if you notice in some of these boss fights, it's quirky and silly and sparse, and it's jarring on purpose. Like, it is very it's juxtaposed on purpose. It's very bizarre,
uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like uncomfortable and goofy and circus like. But it's been I said it got Hollywooded. It clearly, like, these textures have been blown through the roof. These giant symphonic arrangements have hit the soundtrack. So I think that's kind of, for me, my interpretation of what Beppe is saying. Is these arrangements were really blown up, like, and really, really, like, overblown. And if you're looking for those ironic moments of Demon Souls, they're lost now. But beyond that, I think with this game, I think what they did do really well, beyond just haptic feedback, a point that Blue Point Games really wanted to make is they wanted every weapon to feel different. And that's what I think they did extremely well. I remember reading, I could be misremembering this. I think they had an interview about this too, where they said they wanted you to use different weapons in different situations. Like, if you were in a tight corridor, your halberd's going to bounce off the walls. Like, they wanted you to use a variety of weapons. And I think not only do the animations show that, the back stabs and the front stabs, they actually made me feel like I should be prepared with more than one thing, which I thought was successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I played through this game, I had two weapons on at once. It's a really interesting thing you have to keep in mind, because, like, in Dark Souls or any other game in this franchise, really, you typically just keep the one weapon. But in this one, because I was keeping two, I had to keep my equipment weight in mind. Where, okay, I'm holding another weapon now. I'm not going to be able to wear this heavier helmet or something like that. Because, Greg, I totally agree. In one hand, I had my magic weapon that I used, but some enemies are very highly resistant to it. So I had to keep my battle axe in my back pocket just in case my main weapon didn't work. And because, anyone who's played these games, you don't want to be going into the equipment switching screen in the middle of a fight.
Oh no!
No, it's very panicky.
And that has been preserved from the original. That I know you have an axe to grind with the Mario leveling.
Oh,
but
okay,
I think that
sure.
is something unique about this game, is that each area has, like, the enemies have their own weaknesses. Like Shrine of Storms is crushing weaknesses. The guys in the mine are vulnerable to pierce.
Yep.
And that kind of thing. It's just like it's interesting that certain areas are going to present more of a challenge than others based on what kind of character you are.
Yeah, for sure. So that's so funny, because I didn't even think about my critique of calling it Mario leveling until you brought it up. Where, yeah, I mean, but this remake is 1 for 1, so none of that was changed. That's a reason why I don't think this game is inherently as good as maybe Dark Souls 1, is it feels very disconnected, like having this central hub and going level 1-1 to 1-2 and so on. Not my favorite setup, but I can't really complain about it, because this game was, what I said about this game really was, for better or worse, it is very faithful. So whatever flaws you had with the original game, whether it was with the game design or with the bosses or almost pick something, it's gonna be exactly the same.
Yeah, there's one thing that I kind of wish they had changed. These are actually two bosses I did beat in the original before, I had to stop playing it, were the Adjudicator and the Tower Knight. Mm-hmm. I thought it was very bizarre how in Demon's Souls, there's a lot of, I don't want to call them puzzle bosses, but it's a lot like, Legend of Zelda, where there's a certain weak point you have to hit. You have to do a certain thing before you can do damage. Mm-hmm. And with so many different bosses in the game and so many different ways to take them down, this, by the way, I should preface this. If you're using a melee character, beating the Tower Knight and the Adjudicator is the exact same strategy.
Yeah.
Whack them in a certain part till they fall down and hit him on the head.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very strange choice that they decided not to fix that. I felt they're too similar.
I also had like a a much tougher time with the adjudicator and the swamp.
That was heartbreaking, man.
than I did, and I only just played the original in December because I was getting like the fear of missing out. I was like, shoot, I got to go through it again. That was actually my 5th time playing it. But I for some reason I think it was just the geometry or the way the levels were presented to me. For whatever reason, I struggled more with it. I'm not putting that on the game. I just think it's an interesting disparity.
You can put it on the game. The swamp is not great. Totally
however you want to cut it. I think I actually did forget to bring up that when they announced that they weren't doing the 6th Archstone, I was really disappointed.
Yes.
And okay, so here's my thing. If you want to say that we decided that we wanted to use all our resources on making the other levels as good as possible, sure, I totally accept that. But what they said was, well, it wasn't there in the original game, so we're not doing it in this game. And I was just like, see, I get that because all the concepts were kind of half finished. I get that, but it's like the courage I was talking about. Like, you have to find what made those designs work, and then you implement them. And that's like, this was the opportunity, because they didn't cut that Archstone out in the first time around for artistic reasons. They didn't have enough time. And so my question is, like, if they get approached to do Dark Souls, are they going to keep Lost Izalith all the dragon asses? Is that like what's going to, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't that way. It wasn't that way for artistic reasons the first time around. It was your opportunity to, and I do want to give that a brief little prompt, a little aside for you guys. Are you ever like, are you disappointed when it says like, oh, there's going to be 6 Archstones, but there's actually 5? Is that like something? I don't think we've talked about this on the podcast before.
So I wouldn't say I'm disappointed, but what really irks me, Greg, I think we're going to say the same thing here. It shows it on the menu. It's just X'd out or crossed out or whatever, and you can't get to it. That kind of bugs me.
It's weird.
Why is it even in the menu?
Yeah.
Like, get rid of it. If it doesn't exist, just get rid of it.
The tendency menu.
Yes, that's what I mean.
And that was the case in the original too.
Yeah, so I'm like, why not just remove that if I can't go there anyway?
Faithful.
That's a very,
Do you guys think the
choice.
6th Archstone was supposed to be, you've completed all 5, now here's the final level, it's the 6th one? Do you think it was supposed to be that, where like you've done all 5, now the final level is not just a warp and go, it's, okay, now we warp to 6? Is that what it was supposed to be?
Would have been interesting. I mean, have you seen like the footage? I talked about it a lot the last time we talked about this game.
Remind me.
It's like a snowy wasteland. It's kind of like the Dark Souls 2 DLC.
Okay.
And it's like all the enemies were like half animal.
Okay.
And they were like, so there was like bear men and wolf men and like owl men. And it looked very original, very creative. And that was one of those things about that, like even the cut content of that game was creative.
Yeah, I'm not like super disappointed that they didn't bring back the 6th Archstone, but it would have been a nice thing to give the fans if they included like a 6-1. Just give it the first level. I don't need 3 bosses. I don't need an archdemon.
And I had my hopes up for that because when they did Shadow of the Colossus, they included that sword or whatever. There was like a secret
They
quest.
added some stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe.
I could be wrong. Has Blue Point made an original game ever?
That's a great question.
I don't think so.
I've only ever heard of them about.
I want to say yes, but I don't know what it is.
Because, do you think? I'm not saying they're incapable, because obviously, they've made some really, really good remakes and remasters. Do you think probably where do you think that decision came from for them not to create content for this game? Do you think it was from Sony Japan and FromSoft? Do you think it was was this game published by Bandai Namco or no? Was it Sony Japan, and that was it?
I don't think
Who was the
so.
publisher of the remake?
I thought it was Sony.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, where do you think
it was
that's
Atlas originally, right?
Yeah, I mean, where do you think that directive came from? Where no, it's going to be faithful. Was that like? I'm really just like hypothesizing here. That can't be like them not believing in their own skills. Like, it's got to come from somewhere.
My gut feeling says it came from the top.
Yeah, I think it was ultimately like a wise allocation of resources because everything else is very polished.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm glad that they didn't try to make it at the expense of the overall experience.
Right, if they made a 6 Archstone, it sucked. That would have taken away from the overall.
See, but that's another question mark, though, where it's like, what are you going to fix according to what I want?
Yeah,
it's
true.
so hard. Like, what do you do?
It's hard. I mean, ultimately, I don't have a lot more to say about it, but I think basically my closing statement, I guess, would be that it's a very impressive recreation.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think it's an outstanding tech demo for the PS5. Probably one of the strongest launch titles that I've seen in years.
Absolutely.
But for me, ultimately lacking that Miyazaki touch, like the little weirdness, the little quirks. And I found myself, I mean, it's hard when you're doing a remake, of course, but I found myself kind of on autopilot a little bit, probably because I've played the original so many times. But I just didn't really get lost in the world as much as I did in the original game.
Yeah, sure. So I think for someone maybe like Nick who hasn't played it before, you probably loved every second of it because everything was new to you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what the right word for that is, where I mean, it's new to it's enthralling you because it's new.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's new, it's shiny, it's a remake, it looks great.
But for you, it's a brand new game.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was engaged when I played this game. I hadn't played it in a long time. Mm-hmm. I didn't play the original one maybe since it came out. It had been a really long time since I played this. I guess the question that like I would have for the panel is, do you guys think Blue Point should do Dark Souls or no?
I'll take this one first. I actually don't think Dark Souls is on the docket for Blue Point because they just did Dark Souls Remastered a couple of years ago. So I really don't think it's going to be on the docket. If anything, if Blue Point is going to make another FromSoft game, I think it's either going to be Dark Souls 2 or Bloodborne.
Really?
That's what I think.
They're too recent.
I don't know, man. Bloodborne's only 2015.
I was gonna say like a HD 60 frames per second remaster of Bloodborne.
That's
like
it seems like more their speed.
I don't think like a full remake.
No pun intended.
Yeah, right.
Dude, I would fucking welcome a 2 remake. I mean,
yeah.
Let's
wait a second. Let's not make that a 1-for-1 remake. Let's hope they change some things.
Oh, good point. Good point. I think that's the problem is that I treat it the same way as I see like a movie remake or a, if you're covering a song, let's say, and it has to have something going for it instead of like, it can't be like a Weezer Teal album where you're literally just copy pasting like the same textures, the same tempo, the same everything. And I think that's what I'm looking for when it comes to remakes. Like if there's, adapt things that have room for improvement and then capitalize on that room for improvement. And that's, I think, my final kind of say in this matter. I do want to continue our trend of scoring.
Sure.
If that's cool.
Yeah,
you
sure.
Want to go first?
Wow, what would I score this game? That's a great question. I think I have to stay true to my word. I believe I told our friend Kyle that for me it's an A-. And because it is a 1-to-1 remake. Like, if you don't like the original one, you're not going to like this either. It's still quirky. We should mention the enemy AI is the same.
Yes.
The tendencies and aggros are identical.
The placement is
identical, right? None of it was changed. If you didn't like any of that stuff, you are not going to like it. Like, it is exactly the same. But what I said to Kyle is, I mean, also, Storm King was still the shit. And that's my favorite part.
Okay.
What, did you not like Storm King?
It kind of pissed me off. Really? I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, that's
I thought it was cool. It was atmospheric as fuck. But dude, swinging it reminded me of the fucking Dark Souls 3 Yorm fight. You wind
that's
up.
interesting though because
It should have been the other way around.
Well, I know because I played 3 first. But yeah, like you go to fire the thing, then you get shot in the chest. Okay, then you go again. Up, you got shot
Those
again.
things really did piss me off this time around.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Yeah, you fire it. Oh, there it goes, and you were 3 inches away from it. I'm sorry, man.
You know what? I think.
Also, it's got 12 durability. It broke. Sorry, dude.
That's really funny.
So,
I never had that problem, but I mean, I do have one more question for the panel. But let's go around with grades first. So I said an A- because I think number 1, it is tight as fuck. Number 2, it looks amazing. Number 3, the audio issues didn't bother me as much as Beppe, so maybe I would have taken it down a peg if I had paid more attention. And also, like, the original Demon Souls looks horrible. Like it's like, and not from like an artistic, quirky inspiration perspective, but it looks like Play-Doh.
Graphic fidelity standpoint,
it's really weird.
It's a 2009 game that looks even older.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's an A- because I just think it is a 1-to-1 remake. It looks amazing and plays amazing and has the same flaws, and I like the original one. Nick.
So would you guys mind if I if I got on my soapbox for a little bit and about some of my experiences coming to this basically fresh?
Sure.
Like, honestly, let's be honest here. I beat maybe 2 levels of the original, maybe 3. So I really don't have any experiences with it. So for me, the parts that really bugged me were things they didn't fix, right? So a big reason of why I totally changed my character from at the beginning I was strength, I changed it to magic, where I didn't cast anything. I was using a magic weapon. The main reason I did it was I had no idea how to upgrade my crushing battle axe any further. I looked it up afterward. Apparently the upgrade item to do it is only available by killing rockworms. I'm like, that's the only place. There's no lizards drop it. It's not available as a drop anywhere else. That's it. I'm like, that sucks. So that's not good. I wish they had fixed that. I had a big gripe with that. As far as the music goes, so obviously I didn't play the original. So once I did seen that you two had spoken about the music in our private group chat, so I said, okay, I'm gonna go and give these a listen here. So Beppe, you provided some examples, and I went through and I listened to the originals compared to the remakes ones when I finished the game, and I totally get the tonal difference.
Yeah.
Now, if anyone listening doesn't know, Beppe and Greg are musicians, and they're very in tune with what is musically good, like in a scientific sense.
So we think.
So we say. Me, I don't know anything. I think, ooh, big trumpet, good. I hear I get to the. Not the final boss, but you guys know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You get to that music changed to a big, orchestrated, big deal fight. And you know what? I walked in there, I heard that music, and I said, let's fucking go.
This is the end of the game.
This feels like Sephiroth. I'm ready to fucking go.
I think there's no accounting for preference. As long as you can recognize that they're different.
Yes.
And that people have different tastes and impressions of what it should be.
Yep.
And that's all I gotta say.
I totally recognize the tonal shift, and I get it.
Yeah.
That if you like some of the quirky and weird music from the original and they're not here, I totally see that. I wish they had kept the way they did Maiden Estrella, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
I beat that boss. I'm like, oh, she's got an AoE. That's kind of weird. Okay. But I guess that wasn't in the original.
No,
okay.
no.
Well, either way, soapbox over. I really like this game. I think I said at the very beginning, I actually may rate this higher than Dark Souls 3, but maybe recency bias.
At least on par.
Yeah, but that might be some recency bias because, I like pretty things.
Sure.
This game was really pretty. It was brutal. Whenever I threw my axe into someone, I felt it and I loved it. I am gonna go with Greg and give this an A- because, like I said, I had some gripes that I feel like would have been just quality of life improvements. One that we didn't mention. Why is there no poison buildup meter or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that not on the screen?
Like, if it wasn't
I thought
in the original...
the UI in general is very kind of like the Resident Evil 2 thing where it's very sparse.
Blah, blah.
And I didn't really like it, but...
Yeah, so I'm like, it wasn't in the original. Fine, 2009, they didn't really know what they needed. That could not have been difficult to build in.
Yeah.
It's like, you're walking through the poison swamp. You have no idea when the poison's going to kick in. And I thought that was kind of
and there's no plunging attack, and they still have that stupid vault the wall mechanic. So.
Oh, don't eat.
Why is that in the game?
I hate the vaulting wall mechanic. That is the
You never know if you're going to be able to do it. But
that is the worst thing in a Souls game, and I'm gonna put my foot down on that.
That would have been an optimal improvement, right?
I think the first thing when the news broke about this game coming out, one of the first things I posted was, so does it still have this shitty wall jump mechanic?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Everybody was like, well, of course it's going to have it. I'm like, damn, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
But either way, I love this game very much. And I do plan to replay it pretty soon because I accidentally beat it really quickly, and I would like to experience more of it.
You want to taste it this time?
Yeah. I didn't realize that going in the place would finish the game.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I didn't
Sure,
realize
sure.
that. So I'm like, oh, oops. So I would like to actually be more thorough in my completion of the game next time.
Can't rush to the Christmas tree. You got to savor your experience.
I know, but I was like, I was pumped up. I was ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Beppe, do you have a grade?
Yeah, I think ultimately, all said, this is like a 7 out of 10 for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I think it's a really well put together thing. I think it's visually dazzling. It's a really impressive piece of work. I think it just didn't inspire me the way the original did. I think like the original would be like more of like an 8, maybe a 9. Like I'm talking about like before this came out. Like my initial impressions, I was like, wow, because I played it after Dark Souls 1. It was a very different experience, but I still really appreciate it because of how unique it was. So I think it was just missing that little extra something that I will inevitably get from the worst looking Elden Ring. So.
Yeah. Before we end this, there's a thought. The last thought that I had was when we've just discussed this game briefly. The one thing that kind of popped into my brain is I don't know if this remake was for us. I think this remake was almost a marketing game more than anything else, and by that I mean. Wait a minute, it was a PS5 launch title? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that really quirky game we played in 2011 called Dark Souls that we said was really good and no one gave a shit, but now everyone loves it? I think this was marketing. Like, you have a PlayStation 5, Demon Souls was an original that no one played. And this is what I think is, if I were to be more succinct, I think this game was marketed for Nick. Like, probably people who didn't play it.
And I think if you went back and played the original, you'd be like, this is way too janky.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I probably can't play the original now after beating the remake.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, and I really think there isn't a lot to say more than what we've said already. I really think what I'm proud of about the Demon Souls remake, it finally puts Dark Souls at like the front of it looks good, it plays good, and it's a PlayStation mascot. I mean, some people might cringe at that and say, I don't want that. But I think finally this franchise we like is kind of quote unquote in the mainstream, and Sony actually appreciates it as its son and child rather than it's a weird quirky game that weird gamers like, which I think that's a good thing. I mean, that's really my final thought on this, and thank you guys so much for this discussion, and we will see you next time on Goddamn GameCube.